Oh, you pop. Yeah.
No, I got this whole one in the room. Sure.
That's
Yeah.
that question. I was like, so like big question. Good to see you again.
You do fill out your
I literally have it sometimes. Prominence.
Yeah, I'm probably going down there. Oh, okay. I have two different businesses that invite me.
All this stuff.
Yeah, that's what
There we go. Level works.
That was French.
Well, howdy, everyone. Microphone work? No. Now they're working? Nope. I have a teacher voice. Can everyone hear me okay? Is that cool? Are we good on the feed? Yeah. Yeah, maybe. Is there a different microphone to use? I can put it closer to my mouth. I can put it further away from my mouth. Thank you all for bearing with me. Wonderful. I'm going to be right by the speaker. We'll see how that goes. All right. Howdy, everyone. Thank you guys so much for coming out. I'm really excited to be able to be one of the first people to be able to lead a panel here at Canna Connect number 4. Big shout out to Steve and Canna Connect for having us out today. A little introduction of myself. I'm Tanner with the Minnesota Cannabis College. I'm really excited to be able to help lead this panel today, talking about brewing a budding market, the THC beverage market here in Minnesota. This has definitely been one of those markets that really took Minnesota and I think the country by storm. Looking at where cannabis products were 2-3 years ago, beverages existed. They were definitely part of the market, but looking at where they are today, it's been a pretty big change. So I'm excited to be able to dig into that change, dig into what the future of cannabis beverages look like here in Minnesota. And we've got a great panel of people that Steve put together that we're going to be talking to today. So I'm going to do like a little brief introduction, and then most of today, you're not going to be hearing me talk. You're going to be hearing them talk, which is far better. But first, we got Andy Herzog. So Andy is the THC brand manager at Modest. While Modest produces in-house favorites like Tint and Melt, he also helps to connect growing and aspiring brands to the Minneapolis-based and traditionally alcohol-focused brewing industry, helping them to find a role in the cannabis market. We got Logan Fleischman, who is the owner and CEO of Zero Proof NA Beverage House in Northeast Minneapolis. He helps to connect customers to high-quality products made without alcohol, showing that other beverages, even those with cannabis, can find a way into Minnesotans' lives. Lauren Bertrand, no, I'm just kidding. Lauren Bertrand is the field sales and marketing manager for Warehouse Beverage Co. And in that role, she collaborates with distributor partners and helps Wink to reach their goals in Minnesota's market. And then finally, we've got Chris Freem, who is the brand manager for Hohenstein's Inc., a locally owned and operated distribution company with a track record of serving Minnesotans for over 70 years. So we've got a lot of expertise that we have on this panel today, and I'm excited to jump into it. First off, as a very brief introduction, aside from me just sort of saying who you are, what brings you to the cannabis industry here in Minnesota? Sort of what's your connection and how did you arrive here? We'll sort of pass it down the line.
My name's Andy. I work for Modest Brewing. Cannabis has been a big part of my life personally for at least half of it. And really, I think I shout out Tom Thorpe probably every time I get on a microphone in this setting. But if you don't know Thomas at Granny's, he and I go back to 7th, 8th grade. He showed up 2 days after the initial legislation that allowed us to make these beverages with water saw in hand. And we were in the game like less than 6 weeks later, we had a product launched. So huge credit to him. It's just networking, I think. Going back to Hopkins High, 2010, there's so many people out there and in here that have some connection to that network of people. And it's been really cool to be able to bring that to the background I was building professionally in beer, brewing, liquor, retail, et cetera, to be able to inject my love for cannabis in this huge boom has been massive.
Thanks, Andy. I'm Logan. Also went to Hopkins. I didn't know you were a Hopkins guy. And we used to call it Potkins back in the day. That's what we were known as. Yeah, I'd say again, long time kind of cannabis consumer. I watched it help over the years some dear family members through bouts with cancer. So definitely involved in sort of the health and wellness side of the plant. And now as we see it broadening into Main Street, the, recreational side of the plant that we all love, I think, as well. I worked for many, many years in fine wine and spirit distribution and quit drinking alcohol about 3 years ago and started exploring all these like incredible non-alc options, NA beers, NA wines, really cool like mocktails and NA spirits, and was ordering a lot of this stuff direct to my house for personal consumption. And I thought it would be really cool to try and bring a bunch of unique NA products under one roof to a storefront for people like myself or people curious in that space to come in, shop, and see, what is sort of like leading this new category and new products that are becoming available all the time. And then with the cannabis beverages really starting to drive this category of the plant into more of a traditional, like NA option, effect driven, non-alcoholic product. It's starting to live on liquor store shelves. They're starting to put it as a category, and it's really driving right across the right along parallel to the NA industry as in a whole. So that is a huge part of what we have at the store, definitely. I guess flipping back, I spent many years in Colorado in my early 20s chasing a snowboard career, but wound up doing a lot of brokerage from processors into manufacturers when it came to distillate and like plant material in the cannabis space. Worked with a friend of mine many years ago to develop a certified organic extract process for bubble hash rosin, like dab wax. And then we sold that SOP out to larger marijuana companies. And then I came back to Minnesota and built a career in the fine wine and spirit industry. And now I run a nice little shop in Northeast Minneapolis.
Hello, everybody. My name's Lauren with Warehouse Beverage. So kind of coming from the supplier side here. I my career is born and raised in the beverage industry. I started out in spirits, in wine, got involved in the beer side of the industry right around the time of the seltzer boom. And then through COVID and all the craziness that the pandemic brought our industry, opened up the doors to kind of look around at some other things. I was involved, excuse me, on the craft side here locally with the lab and Bev Source. So the lab was a public-facing tap room, but also had a pilot facility and full-blown quality testing lab on site. So we actually worked closely with a lot of craft breweries at that time, and still to this day. And they will test and work on batching formulations, ingredients. I was actually at the lab during the time when the bill in Minnesota was signed in to allow these consumables with the max cap. So it was almost the next day we were getting these water solubles and all these new ingredients and terpenes and things dropped on our doorstep off, right off University in St. Paul. And it was this whole new category, literally from conceptualization to commercialization for some people happen. So really dove into kind of in a similar sense of Logan. I was taking a step back with alcohol in my own personal life during that time and seeing that there was so many different options and people working on and very passionate about ingredients and different forms of functional ingredients that's not alcohol, but can still have fun without alcohol. So, I really drove a passion down that path of just real ingredients, good processes. Always joked around that I've studied grapes, I've studied hops. Someday I'll study cannabis, and never in my wildest dreams did I expect to be here now doing exactly that, at least at this point. But I officially did some consulting and contracting with a few of the brands that came out of the pilot facility and helped them with some commercialization structures, a lot of great brands, ideas, formulations, but no real true plan to go to market. And where a lot of my strength and experience lies is working with distributor partners, working with local retail accounts. We talk about this 3-tier system, but I get to sit and work with that 4th tier 2, which is our consumers, right? Activations like this, talking to the consumers, educating consumers, but also then supporting every step along the way, all the way from the supplier down to the customer actually bring the product home and putting on their shelf. So I really dive into that space and kind of speaking those languages and building those relationships and kind of maintaining that integrity around market. So that's me.
Thank you, Lauren. My name's Chris Freem. I've been in the adult beverage industry since about early 2000s. Worked in a bar and then left the bar scene to go work for a local company called Crispin Cider, small startup out of Northeast. In a matter of years, we built that thing up to be sold to Molson Coors. So I actually worked for a giant like Molson Coors for about 3.5 years as well. And then I left there to go work for a regional brewery out of Colorado, one called Oscar Blues, which they have now also gotten into the cannabis space since then. And then shortly after that, I went to go to the distributor side. It was about 8 years ago. I've been a brand manager for 7 years. And I've been what we like to call a legacy THC user for 20 years. So right when I became a brand manager, I told our ownership, once THC becomes a thing, like that's what I want to manage. That's what I want to look at and follow. I did not think it was going to happen this quickly. And then when it did happen, I didn't think it was going to blow up and become something that quickly. So us at Hohenstein's, we sold our first THC beverage in August of 2022, August 8th, about a month after the July bill went through. And then since then, it's been about 2 or 3 meetings a week with brands and beverages from around the country who are all trying to come to Minnesota. We've seen the entire gamut of the beverages, the styles, the flavors. And really one of the most interesting things, most fun things to see is like how the market has been telling us what is working and what's not working, the different styles and everything. We all have our ideas of what this market is going to look like. We like to think that we can influence it, but the market will always tell us what's going to work and what's not going to work. And then we have to pivot around it. And we all had our own ideas of what was going to work and what wasn't. And it's been really fun to see the things we were right on, the things we were wrong on, and how quickly we can change and pivot and move and stuff like that. So, yeah, a lot of what we do is just between the retailers and the suppliers. So work with Lauren and work with Logan as kind of the in between. And one other thing I just kind of really want to touch on with the beverage space, especially, and why a distributor works so well in this space, is that beverages are an extremely freight intensive product. A case of water beverages costs or weighs about 40 pounds each case. A keg is 160 some pounds. Whereas flour, gummies, edibles, like we literally talk about grams and ounces and a couple of pounds when we're shipping those. So the distributor model has really worked well for the beverage space because of that. So I believe that's why I'm here, is to kind of help talk more about why it's working here and how it's separating from the rest of the hemp industry, the rest of the marijuana industry, and even the parallels to alcohol, yet it's completely different than alcohol. So it's just been a lot of fun. So.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate it. So outside of doing cannabis, I teach high school social studies. And so part of my deal is if any of you guys think of a question sort of as a follow-up to something that they say, definitely feel free to ask it. The one thing that I request is that you do raise your hand so I can give you the microphone so the people online can hear as well. But definitely feel free to ask a question as well. So we're going to be talking through a lot of the industry tonight, looking at everything from how beverages are made, but also at how they get distributed. But the question that I had first is, well, the stream of commerce to creating a product that's flower-based might be a little bit more traditionally known, sort of looking for genetics, growing out that product and figuring out how to package that product. There's a lot of things that go into figuring out how to create a cannabis beverage, a lot of different components to consider. Can you talk a little bit about what it looks like to go from, hey, I have an idea to a product, to actually getting it created? And I'm going to ask you to use a specific example. I would like a pickle THC seltzer. So tell me, how can I get that made? Okay, you can go first.
Well, specifically having Tanner ask that question is fun because I have made a beverage with Tanner, and Tanner showed up with a recipe already written, which as a producer, oh my gosh, I'm going to assume that you've already bench tested this and maybe there's a right answer. But that's a great jumping off point, I would say, in a market that is super flooded. And we'd kind of alluded to the hard seltzer boom a couple years ago. And I think that's kind of what's starting to happen and homogenize in this industry, is how do you not be redundant? Everybody's got a sparkling water with essence of mango, berry, whatever, your 5 basic fruit flavors. So you do have to look outside of, if you want something to stand out, it can't be just another repackaged different label on the same product. As far as pickle juice goes, first, where are you sourcing it? How does it interact with your emulsion? Do you have, are you able to replicate that in a shelf stable environment, canned and packaged over time, and track degradation of your emulsion if there is any? There's tons of scientific white papers we would need to read first. But in the spirit of modest, I would say, sure, let's figure that out. You're going from bench test trials, which Tanner knows. You showed up with a source for lab grade terpenes and an exact fruit ratio and preferred supplier for his fruit puree. That was killer. You need to vet, how is this going to scale? Where am I going to get 110 gallons, let's say, of pickle juice? Are we going to make that ourselves? Do we have the wherewithal and the resources to do that? And then how are you going to market it? Where, Modest is the largest self-distributed brewery in the state. We have a footprint, but are we going to be able to bring it to the places that you want us to put that? Do you have a specific audience in mind for that? Is there a venue or an event or something with that in mind? And is this something that you are doubling down on? This is a brand you're committed to? Are you going to do this year round? Is this a seasonal thing? There's a lot of other questions beyond just like pickle juice, emulsion, can. So yeah, you got it.
I would say that you would want to start with cucumbers.
Yeah, I was gonna say you threw me threw me off handing the mic to me right away. I think for me coming from, the field sales and marketing side, I can speak a little to what I overshadowed and saw at the lab of, again, the ingredients and what all goes into it. And I could, in my own brain, tell you that process, but not as good as any of them. So I won't touch on that side. But for me, when it comes to these brands and a lot of the brands that I was working on early on coming out of the lab, they had the product, they had it in hand, it was ready to go. But what they needed to strengthen was the materials that they were going to use to go out and tell their story. So on top of making sure you have a solid product and you have something there that's worthwhile, make sure that your story stands up to that as well. The integrity of your brand also has a message that follows it. So making sure that that message is clear, it's not too cluttered. It's easy to relay. You're not going to miss a ton of information down the telephone pole. That will happen. If you can have those clear, concise messages, a simple plan of action on social media. And so much of that, I say all the time, you can spend a lot of money in digital side of the world, but so much of that can also just happen organically. And you will see so much growth by just being authentic to yourself and your brand and your message through those channels. That's going to allow yourself to build up an audience and build that trust directly with that consumer without being face to face. So again, one of those things just over the last decade in this industry, how much that has grown to be such a priority in getting your message across. I would say that just make sure you have a solid, simple plan to go out, have the materials ready. It doesn't have to be $1 million marketing budget to make something happen. You can really have strong materials from a print shop and, a team of brand ambassadors doing tastings in store and some authentic social media. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to echo what everybody else has said. The common thread here is that you have to have a plan. Do not just limp into making a beverage because, as I said, for us, just distributing and shipping is really expensive. But all of the products that go into a beverage, the can, the liners, the emulsion, the marketing, the packaging, the cardboard, all of that is way more expensive than a lot of other products that are out there. So if you're going to do a beverage, just don't limp into it. Have a plan. Again, the plan doesn't have to be expensive. It just requires time and a lot of questions. Find people who know how to do these type of things. Like any one of us up here would be more than happy to sit down, have a conversation and, share the expertise that we have of what works, what doesn't, and have it all on paper before you bring it to the manufacturers. Because obviously they love that. And as a distributor, I love it when a brand comes to me with a complete brand. When I ask them well, who's your target customer? Well, we're going to figure that out. It's no, we want to know who you're going for. Where do you want to, what store do you want this in? Do you want it in a liquor store? Do you want it in a health and wellness store? Do you want it in a hair salon? What are you making? Who's your customer? Where are you guys looking for? And stuff like that. So yeah, the overarching thing is have a plan, have a concise plan. And I'd even say have a plan B. If plan A doesn't work, have something where you can pivot and recoup a lot of the cost, but have a plan B as well. Cause yeah, you just don't want to get caught with your pants down. If the emulsion for some reason doesn't work with the pickle juice, now you've got a lot of cases of weird tasting pickle beverage. And it's going to be really hard to move it and sell it. So yeah, have a plan B. What are you going to do with pickle juice that didn't work out? I don't know. So
I'll expand on my cucumber comment just from the lens of a retailer, specifically to, someone walking in to sell me a pickle flavored THC beverage. I am all about this category. It's booming. I think we are starting to get some data back on the subcategories within the beverage space, the flavors, the styles, on what's being looked for, what's being pulled off the shelves more than some other subcategories. But also, I think that we don't have enough data to know, does something like this pickle juice comes out, it's a brand, this is a limited release. I would probably encourage if the person was coming to me, but lean into that sort of marketing strategy. If your brand is to make these wild things and they actually taste good, have the next one in line that, maybe we're coming out with like nacho cheese flavored, IPA or something, and that continues to like build the brand on pull through these like limited drops, super unique. And I think there's something to that in a marketing standpoint.
So what I'm hearing is that there's a chance. Yeah, all right, cool. All right, it's wonderful. All right, perfect. So taking the analogy even one step further, Steve would tell me not to, but we're going to. I'm that creator. I have a cannabis product that I've made, pickle juice beverage, whatever be it. And I'm really feeling strongly like this is something that I want to get out there. Maybe I've started as selling out of my car, distributing to people, and I'm realizing, man, this scale is not working for me. Can you talk a little bit about what each of your brands or what your roles bring to a cannabis brand? Maybe like from a distributor standpoint, what can you offer to a cannabis brand? From a sales standpoint, retailer, et cetera. We'll go in the opposite order this time. Yeah, there you go.
I'll start with that one. Although it doesn't give me a whole lot of time to kind of think about it. So one common misconception with a lot of distributors is that we choose favorites. I currently work for technically a Molson Coors is probably one of our biggest brands. But there is no difference to us between a Molson Coors brand or like Lauren's brand Wink. They're to us boxes on a truck, and we want to sell as much as we possibly can, and we want to make it as efficient as we possibly can. So we want to fill that truck with everything. And it's going to be across the board. It's going to be expensive stuff. It's going to be cheap stuff. It's going to be sodas. It's going to be beer. It's going to be THC. It's going to be a lot of various things. So what I would want to hear from a new brand and a new supplier coming in is, again, kind of what that plan is. Where do they want to go, and how does it fit into certain spaces, and how does it fit also within our business as a distributor? If it's something that we don't have and it fills something within our portfolio, we are way more likely to bring something in too. So we want to hear that story. We want to hear why your product and your brand is so much different than everybody else's. And it doesn't matter how much money you have, how much branding's behind it, how much money you're putting into social media or anything like that. We just want to know why you believe your brand is going to work. And how is it going to work for us? How are we going to take your brand and get it onto trucks? So again, a lot of that kind of goes back to the original plan and what you're looking for within that space. And that's why I say, don't just make it just to make it. Like have a reason behind it. And honestly, the story is one of the biggest things, one of the best selling stories. And also, how are you going to support the brand after we bring it to a retailer? How is the retailer going to feel supported and sell it through their shop as well? A lot of that comes from the suppliers, because nobody's going to tell your story better than you, because you lived it from day one. And also, you wake up every day and your biggest priority is going to be your brand. Where within the distributor space, we have a lot of brands. And again, we don't care which brand is which. We try to give them all the same amount of attention. But at the realization is we have a lot of brands. So how are you going to get our focus for your brand as well? That's really important for a distributor. So how do you do that, Lauren?
Well, yeah, I was going to say, now that he just gave you a bit of a job description of how we work together. So that's my job. That's where I step in, right? As somebody working in what we call on the supplier side. So coming from, the brand side, I maintain and help grow those relationships and markets. So again, I get to have the opportunity to really hit all 3 or 4, because the customers are the most important segment there. So coming from initially a distributor level career out in market, selling a bunch of different brands, priorities are changing every single month. And it's been 5 or 6, maybe 7 years since I've been in a role managing, a huge portfolio from different suppliers at the distributor level. And as that has even grown, the amount it's grown, not just with THC brands, but seltzer brands and craft brands and everybody else's brands and grandma's brands and your mom's brands, like all the brands that are coming in. As I got to the supplier side, we see the growth of these brand development representatives or these brand ambassadors that are becoming more of those relationship builders, market development, managers, state managers specific to suppliers. So that's where I sit, where I am that in-market person that can help supplement, where I know Chris's team is so overloaded and we can't be 24/7 on their brain, on their mind. But I know I can go into these accounts and help supplement what they're there to do. Their elevator pitch on Wink is not quite what I can cover to them to help explain that, you know, this is what we've done, this is what we're doing, this is how we're supporting, you know, locally, nationally, federally, legislatively, all these things that we're trying to make sure everybody is getting the correct messages, they're getting the right information, education. I can come in and maybe find some time that works a little bit better for those buyers to sit down and really walk them through how we can support them, work with them on developing events, you know, with Stephen and Cannabis College and all the things that they're doing. I'm able to kind of have my foot in the door to keep the conversations going when, you know, our distributor partners, you know, inevitably have other priorities that they need to look at as well. So where I sit here is just supporting my brands, supporting my retailers, supporting the customers, and supporting the distributors. So a little bit of a busybody kind of day to day, but I love it because I get to do something different every day and meet great people in this space and kind of keep it all connected and revolving a little bit.
All right. So I think for everyone in this room, and I don't know where people are, because I know the you know, program was wanting to start a beverage or maybe have a beverage, you're trying to build it further or sell more of it. This whole kind of model where, you know, brand owner, supplier support, distributor is for scale, like the only way. You guys are entering the, you know, CPG, the consumer packaged goods industry. There is no, I don't think there's any sector of industry that is more competitive, more saturated than that industry, right? And so just, I would say, knowing like, you got to work your tail off. You got to eat, sleep, breathe, live this brand, and give that supplier support. Because as a retailer, you know, the products and depth in the portfolio I buy from Hohenstein's, the brands that they carry that have direct supplier support, they're in my stores doing tastings in my stores, you know, cross promoting on our social medias with us, all that stuff. They have like billboard effect across my shelves with the majority of the products that they make, because I'm a massively busy person just trying to run like the books and keep staff on my you know, employees in my store. And so if I'm getting that help as a team effort, that is massively valuable to me, even more so than, you know, like price structures and deal buys and things. Thank you.
I would say, again, going back to that modest, we've really hung on to specifically our distro rights. We're about to turn 8 years old. We have a pretty large footprint across the state, pretty saturated throughout the entire greater metro. Duluth, Rochester, Mankato, St. Cloud, Fargo, Moorhead are all pretty covered. It's the gaps in between. And that's by design. 100% agree with these guys about the support and the freight and the logistics that go into it. And coming from a beer background, this is really exciting because in the world of beer and brewing, there's franchise law that when you sign on with a distributor, you're entering a contract that is extremely difficult to get out of. You don't have to deal with that on the cannabis side. I hope it stays that way forever, but definitely be aware of their plan over time. You want to see just as much as you are pitching yourself to them and you're showing your passion and your story. You want to know who is out there representing your product, because once it's out of your hands, that's somebody else that is representing your product. And again, with all due respect, because there's tons of brands out there that could not hope to get off the ground or have the reach that they do without a distributor, but you want to make sure that you're picking the right one. And right now, Modest is actually finally shopping around some outstate beer rights to try and fill in those gaps. And everything is conditional on THC has to come with it. These offers were, so they're hungry for brands. They're trying to capture market share with it. Like everybody's just kind of throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks, kind of to your point of like, you're not curating specific brand necessarily, but you're just trying to get product on the shelf, and that's kind of showing in how saturated it is. I think hanging on to that as long as you possibly can. I think there's some people that have gotten a really good product started, launched off the ground, have a great network. And then the first time that they get an order for 40 cases going somewhere that won't fit in their car, they panic and they give up 30% off their top line to a distributor that can promise to take them everywhere, which is awesome. But now that's the other thing to calculate in. That's not free. That's not a partnership. So I've also seen a lot of people with a really good competitively priced product then have to go and build into a distributor model where obviously they're taking something for all of that freight and warehousing and storage. So factoring that in, almost from going back to formulating your product, you want to stand out and you want to be able to do it in a way that's cost effective. And if you are counting on a distributor to get your stuff where it needs to go, you got to factor in another 30% before it gets to that wholesale price that gets marked up at retail and hits the shelf. And if that happens and you're suddenly $6 higher than a bunch of the competition, it's going to have to taste really, really good at this point. And that's a struggle for a lot of people. And then where does that compromise come in? Are you cutting corners on the product side and making something that's cheaper and easier to create so that there's room for all of these other hands to touch it before it gets to a consumer? Or are you going to buy a panel van and hang on to that a little longer and try and make those 40 case drops yourself? Right. Yeah. U-Haul's awesome. Those single apartment, 10-foot trucks are like $50 for the day. You can do some real damage if you're organized. Exactly. Yeah. Menards, $20 an hour at Menards.
I love it. No, I really appreciate it. And I hear a lot of notes of there's similarities between beverages, be they cannabis or be they alcohol. There's a lot of lessons that we can learn by looking at distribution or the creation of alcohol beverages that we look at cannabis. One thing that I think we're seeing, that I know that we're seeing a lot of right now is new product launches. A lot of people saying this is a new product that I either want to bring into the market in Minnesota or that for the first time I'm creating. Can you talk about what things you've seen that have made a successful product launch? Things that maybe are notes of, wow, that really went well versus, hey, maybe don't do that next time? Either alcohol or cannabis. Lots of similarities.
Yeah. And again, speaking from modest perspective, we do. Sorry, I can stop prefacing it. You know where I work. We do. Hold on. Yeah. We do a lot of people approach us for co-pack because they want a year-round white label product that they can sell full-time and make their main gig. We're not set up for that, but we are very into collaborating and doing one-off limited releases to boost brands that we believe in that are maybe not already in beverage or are in the edible space and want to try it out and see what that would be like and get the reach that we have with that kind of market saturation in all these liquor stores, bars, restaurants, whatever. And that I think is always more attractive when you have something like a Canna Connect, when you have one spot where there's going to be a lot of eyes on it right away. And then it's about right sizing that batch down to the numbers of like, what is the attendance of this event? How many cans? What is the average consumption per attendee of can? And then how do we right size that batch with a little extra for retail, et cetera. So I think having a real plan as far as how are you going to get eyes on it? Where is it going to go? And again, it's just planning. I don't know. I think a lot of what's going to be has been and will be discussed today is just having a plan and doing your homework before any liquid ever touches a tank, and understanding your market and who you want to get this in the hands of before you start.
And I think being not afraid of that plan to fail at times. And sticking with it, right? Like if this is startup, you got to know that nothing ever goes according to plan. What was the question again?
Just sort of like what lessons can we learn on like a successful product?
Oh yeah.
Doing something new, trying to share with the world. What kind of tips would you give someone doing that for the first time?
I guess from like a retailer's perspective, I think what I find with new products I've brought into the store and that have sort of just like hit the ground running, we're unique in the fact that it's kind of a boutique, retailer. It's a niche market. So I do like long sales staff training. It's a very guided sales experience from entering in her store and understanding the layout, and we're driven by education. And so very much like everybody gets a full experience to educate on all the products we sell. Particularly a lot of that goes into either our like functional beverage section, our, medicinal mushroom stuff, our kava root stuff, or our cannabis section. And so I would say that what I've seen successful is when all this sort of social backup on the direct in-person supplier brand support activates right alongside us. Our guests now, we're young, we're coming up on a year, but our guests are very engaged, and I've noticed retaining this like education. So when there's brand support or suppliers telling the story, they'll sit down at my like back bar, ask really great questions, and then continue to just like be loyal to that product for week after week. And when I came up in the fine wine and spirit industry on a distribution side, it was maybe 10% of the time that you would see that residual from your like in-store tasting or educational efforts. And a lot of people just be like, I'm going to go buy the thing that's being shown off this Friday, and you get maybe a week of residual, right? So I think we're starting to see with cannabis, because so many people are curious and so many people are taking to the education side of it, that we're building some brand loyalty, I think, faster in this space than I've seen in other CPG goods.
Well, my brain's been spinning. I've done a lot of brand kickoffs in my career. Whether it's wine or beer, I feel like there's always a seasonal something or other. So I guess in terms of back to, let's just focus on kind of cannabis, new concept commercialization. Some of the things that I've seen, I guess, out in the market, I get to see look at a lot of brands every single day. I'm a very curious person. I'm going to pick it up. I'm going to see where it's made. I'm going to see what you're doing. I'm going to look at ingredients, all those kind of things. So I really like to see information that's easily digestible. If you're a brand new brand on that shelf, especially today, when Wink was introduced into this market last summer, we were fighting for, just some shelf space in these little 8-foot sections. Maybe it was an end cap in some experiences. Well, flash forward, I started at the end of the year. We have some more people out earlier this year, and all of a sudden these 8-foot sections are 16-foot sections, and now they're 24-foot sections. And there's so many brands out there here in Minnesota. We are in this mecca, and we're so lucky to see that variation and experience that as well, and have the chance to try all these different things to find what works best for us. But what I struggle with, and what I've worked with brands on in the past, is how do you pull yourself off that shelf? Because again, your marketing, your information, you're delivering, the engagement you're having with the customers, the tastings in store. If you're taking that time to go beyond that 60-second elevator pitch of who you are as a brand in person, you're going to start capturing the trust of your consumers right off the bat. Know what you're talking about. Have people there that you can, kind of control that script. And that also going back to having those materials ready to go. If you can't be in your store, what is your packaging telling your customers? Are you telling them the full story? Are they understanding if I'm doing keto and I know this is 0 carbs and 0 sugar and this is okay for my lifestyle right now? If that's easily read, even when you're not there, you're starting to gain that trust. If you have a shelf talker that's talking a little bit about, where a Wink 2.5 little mini can would fit in your life, if you can start turning the brains of your customers without even being there, it's such a strong thing to have, whether that's through social or whether that's in store. But going back to the retail support, Chris's team can't be in the store every single day I can't be in these stores every single day. Logan can't be sitting behind the desk every single day controlling these narratives. We want to, believe me, every single one of us would love to be. I would love to be sitting out at my booth right now and talking to everybody about Wink. But I've got an awesome brand team that can speak those words and relay those messages. And we've been, graduating out of the Tetra Packs and do a carton because we recognize that we can have some of that brand information, that brand story. So I guess that would be, I don't know if that really answered that question, but I guess from my side, and when it comes to like commercializing and kicking yourself off, how can you be there without actually being there? Really think about that and how you can get that message across.
Cool. Yeah. So I think I got a thing to not do and a thing to do. I'll end on the thing to do because it's more positive. But one of the things I've seen kind of fail with launches, and again, I've worked for a couple suppliers as well, and we brought some in, and not everybody's going to succeed. Not everybody in this space is going to make it. It's a mathematical impossibility that everybody's going to be successful. But the one bit of advice I would give is if you are going to spend any money on the marketing side of anything, or just spending the money in general, don't spend it on the distribution side. Don't give away free cases. Don't offer your time if you don't have it. Because anybody can sell something for free. It's really easy. I can give you a free case. You're going to bring it in and sell it. The thing that determines whether or not the brand's going to be successful is if that case sells through the retail. Doesn't matter if it gets on Logan's shelf. If it doesn't sell through, he's not going to order it again. And if he didn't pay for it on the first one, he's definitely not going to pay for it on a second one if the first one didn't move. So if you're going to spend the money, spend it on the pull through, on the rate of sale. And we've seen, like, for example, this in-store samplings and building that brand recognition and customer loyalty. That's where you want to spend your money, and that's where you want to get your consumers. Again, anybody can sell something for free. It's really easy. So just pay attention to that, and also pay attention to your time. Your time is very valuable. When I was the first year as a supplier, I worked every single weekend doing 3 to 5 hours worth of samplings. So for 49 weeks, I think I did that, and could do that at 26. I cannot do that at 40. Could not possibly do it. Your time is valuable, so definitely pay attention to that. But as far as things that do work, the one thing that keeps coming to my mind is celebrate every single win you get. No matter how big or how small it is. Early on, we had been joking in this industry, in this category. A lot of the brands that were coming in were new to the beverage industry. And there was one day where a retailer, a big retailer opened up. Every brand that got in there, or we got a bunch of brands into this store, but anybody who didn't get in there was mad they weren't in there. Everybody who got in the store was mad that not all their products were in the store. Everybody who had all their products in the store was mad that it wasn't on the top shelf. And it was like, you guys, we're in there. We did it. We got the sale. Now, let's celebrate it, but tomorrow let's get back to work. Because honestly, the other thing we've been kind of joking more recently too is punching orders and getting on the truck and doing your day-to-day. That stuff is super easy. We can punch those things all day long. 99% of our job is fixing the problems that happen with all the other stuff. So if everything worked perfectly every single day, we'd go into work, we'd high five and go home, but we don't. We all spend 40 to 60 hours a week working because it's always getting to the next one. So just don't forget about celebrating. Anytime you have a win, play it up and sell it, and celebrate it publicly too. The social media stuff is huge every time you got a win. And then again, if you can get it on all the levels, you got the distributor, the supplier, the retailer, everybody celebrating your win, it's just going to elevate it and make it a lot bigger. So.
Thank you. Any questions that people have? Yeah, here, I'll pass over the microphone.
Yeah, hi. So distribution and shelf space sounds crowded, to be honest. Not to dissuade anybody from that, just kind of thinking outside the box there. What are your thoughts and opinions on direct-to-consumer e-commerce sales of beverages?
Take this one. And actually, honestly, it might surprise people because I I'm for the DTC. Yeah, it's probably taking money out of me and Logan's pockets to not get it, you know, through the distributorship or through a retail space. But this early on, I think just kind of everybody having access to it is huge. It's huge for the hemp industry and it's huge for the cannabis industry as well. So I really do like to see it. My bigger concerns with it is with regulating it, making sure that the product you're getting is, you know, tested correctly. It's got the right stuff in it and kind of goes through a lot of the checks and balances that going through this system. It's kind of what we do. And it's on the distributor level is another kind of added bonus in a way to what we do is that we're kind of a one-stop shop for the city of Minneapolis or the state of Minnesota to regulate licensing, taxing, and all that stuff. They could go to 2,500 retail shops, or they could go to the, you know, dozen or so distributors and regulate stuff at that level. Because on the alcohol side, if a retailer doesn't pay their taxes, it's illegal for us to sell them anything. So, and that gets posted to all distributors. So it's way easier to police us than it is at the retail space. So that's where I do get in a little concerned with the DTC side is just kind of the lack of regulations and stuff. And I would just like to see it get tightened up a little bit more on that side of it for the most part. So.
Yeah, I know Logan had something to say. I'll keep mine short, but you know, we do have a DTC side of our business, and what it's allowed for us to do is we scale. Warehouse Beverage has touched a multitude of states. I think at our, you know, highest, I think it's a total of about 17, but we've had to pull back. We've had to make changes, regulation, processing partners. So a lot of things come and go, but being able to have a DTC model still allows us to expand into markets where, again, maybe their state legislation or their state structure, we, again, back to being how blessed are we to be in this market during this time, because as chaotic as it is, like, we're kind of at the forefront of like what's, you know, we're setting the standard of what's going to work. But when you're in these markets, you know, and you don't have access to this, and this is a category you want to learn about, we've been able to still enter markets and engage with consumers, you know, at that level. Whereas maybe on the flip side, their state legislation is kind of a wide open, you know, just wide open. So it allows us to, you know, everything's coming out of the same warehouse for us. So whether it's DTC or it's going out to our state distributor partners or our dispensary channel distribution system. So for us, it's all the same. And I really do take pride in kind of our consistency and regulations. And I mean, Minnesota, our product is special to us because we're our own packaging and the certain things that you need and the cutouts on the bottom. So, you know, just taking the time to do that where it makes sense, like a Minnesota, but then where we can still get our foot in the door, you know, in Arkansas and Louisiana's or Texas's of the world where, you know, I don't know if we want to Wisconsin dive down that alley quite yet, but we can still get product to them if, you know, they know that it's a product that they want to get.
Two quick things. So I am building out and getting ready to launch the e-commerce, the online sales portion of Zero Proof. And through that, learning back to sort of the weight of this product on freight and logistics, and then giving up margin percentage because you're essentially paying these distributors to move that on their trucks, use their sales teams to sell it to these retail accounts. You're almost potentially paying more to pay to ship that product direct to consumer, depending on how far you're going with it. If you're looking at like hard cost of goods and adding your freight charges to it. And then there's a second thing I was going to say that was ripped off yours. I can't remember. Oh, and then the other thing I was going to say is if you, you know, thinking that the distributors, the shelf space is very, you know, saturated, which it is in this market for sure in Minnesota. The internet, when it comes to direct consumer, is even more saturated on these products.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I was going to cover. If you think it took it right out of my mouth. If you think a store shelf is crowded, like the internet is infinite, and I see stuff on my Instagram feed all the time that I know is not compliant, but it's showing up on my feed. So like crazy. And yeah, the freight thing, again, like that's actually, I'm gonna walk back a little bit of my hang on to your distro as long as you can. That is one thing that we're interested in other states. Like there's potential there, but I'm all down to work with those distributors that do only DTC shipping. They've got, if that's all they're doing and their whole thing is to drive that algorithm and those advertisements, get that in front of the right people that are already buying. If there is a subset of people out there that buys 6 different mismatched cans from this huge catalog online, to have a weekly standing order or subscription service or something like that. I would rather go park a pallet with somebody like that than spend a whole bunch of time figuring out drop shipping, setting the logistics that go into that. I've already talked to a few people in Michigan that are similarly just the modest of Michigan basically is up in the UP, and they're doing a ton of that, but they've taken on all that overhead, and you're giving up that margin, but I'm not employing somebody to pack up orders and ship them. That alone, I mean, shipping samples to the lab is several $100s a batch. So again, know when and where to outsource, I think, is hang on to your product as long as you can. But if there's something that requires you to create a whole new department for your little 3-person company, start looking at ways that you can maximize that. If you're going to give up margin, I think that's a way to do it, is let somebody else handle it.
I really appreciate that. So then the last question that I have today is, will you guys help me bring my pickle beverage to... No, I'm just kidding. No, that's really all that we've got time for today. Let's give our panelists a round of applause. Yeah, thank you guys so much for being on our panel today. Thank you guys so much for coming to our first panel today. There are 2 more panels going on throughout the day, so definitely be sure to check those out. Thank you guys so much for coming to Canna Connect. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.